she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
I believe in the ambition, the aspiration.
I mean, does she have a plan? She's been in office for 3.5 years, right? Almost 4. I'm trying to understand what were her biggest accomplishments as vice president. And if she does have a plan, how come she's not trying to implement it now? So she can say, hey, keep me in office so these plans may continue to keep going. Not just say, vote for me while I'm still in office, and then I'll execute the plan.
The dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit.
We're doing tariffs on other...
$5 trillion to America's deficit? Not the debt, but the deficit? Is that true? I mean, I am in favor of the child tax credits. Just average families, you know, working class or middle class, to have a tax credit to have kids. Especially with our, our population's running lower. We're not having as many kids because the cost of living is so high. So I do agree in that aspect. And, of course, Trump will most likely favor doing bigger tax cuts for corporations and the ultra rich. He'll give tax cuts like he did for working families and middle class just to say he did it, but the bigger tax cut will come from those corporations.
Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago.
Okay, inflation, the worst in history right now? I don't think that's the worst in history. I'm not downplaying inflation. Inflation sucks. I feel it too. But I'm pretty sure there's been times where inflation was way worse. Yeah, there's certain items that cost more than it used to. A lot of things like rent and housing cost more than it used to. Auto insurance is going out of control now. But the worst in history? Let me look this up. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is something I just pulled up on the internet. The Madison Trust Company. Check if they're credible. But we've had inflation up to 17%, almost 18% overall in 1917. So that was leading up to the Great Depression. 10 years before the Great Depression. And then 1981, 10%. I do remember reading in history about inflation from the 70s to the 80s beyond 10%, as you can see here. The peak of the inflation we experienced recently was as high as 9%. It still sucks. Doesn't feel good. It's not too off from 1981, but it does need to get resolved.
They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country. First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that...
Okay, there's a lot to unravel there, but I thought she did nothing. So is he talking about her policies, which I thought was nothing? I mean, it could be bad. That's why. Not doing nothing is bad. Or is it Joe Biden's policies? Or just say Joe Biden / Kamala Harris policies. But there's a lot to unravel there. So where should I start? Okay, so buying chips from Taiwan. Taiwan was the leading manufacturer in chips before the pandemic. And that's just what global trade was all about. And no one had a problem buying them until the pandemic happened. And then it was a struggle to get the chips. That's where we learned a lot, saying, hey, we need to start making our own stuff in case something like this happens again. We can't just be so dependent on other countries. Yeah, some trade is good, but we learned about that with like medicine, the foods we get from other countries, a lot of clothing being made in other countries. I mean, there's just so many materials that we depend on other countries because we don't make it here because it costs too much to make it here. Labor costs too much, so we have to depend on other countries with their cheap labor to make our stuff. Oh, she's a Marxist / communist, right? So it's just easy to just label someone and call someone they are this and a that. Who's to say she truly is a communist? I'm sure I'll get trolls in the comments saying, yeah, she is a communist, but maybe someone intelligent and who can say in greater detail and explain in great detail why she is a communist, why she is a Marxist. I'd really like to know. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with a lot of her policies, but I don't think it's at the level of, yes, this person is a legitimate communist. The immigration policies with like the open borders, okay, that is out of control. You just see videotapes after videotapes from independent journalists from all around the world who goes to the border to see, is this true? And you see how easy it is for people to cross. They just cross. And when the border patrol agents come by, they just take them and then they get transported to another city. They don't deport them, which is crazy to me. They take them to sanctuary cities and whatnot. It's crazy that we just do that, right? Like, I don't know how it's just illogical to think that illegal immigration is okay. No, it's not okay. You're welcoming anyone. Criminals, the worst people of the world. I understand that there's some good people in there because they can't afford the process of the whole legal immigration side. I get that too. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, there has to be some common sense. Like, no one allows anyone in their house, a complete stranger they don't know, especially if they look sketchy as hell. You're not going to welcome them into your house. If you're one who's for illegal immigration and open borders, you should also leave your doors unlocked when you go to sleep. Same concept. And I know there was this whole bill about the border security to add more staff, and Donald Trump killed it apparently. He called some people to kill it. However, Joe Biden still has executive power to secure the borders more. He has some ability and authority to do so, but they just don't.
I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
And Trump. Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact.
You hear that from both sides. They lie. They're a liar. That's not true. I watched the whole debate, and that's what half of it was. You're a liar. No, you're a liar. That's false. No, you're false. It was so frustrating. It just makes it hard to be like, okay, who's truthful? Who's saying the right things?
Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. If you want to really know.
I think this is where Kamala Harris was the strongest, was the issues on abortion. She really grilled Donald Trump. And Donald Trump put his foot in his mouth a lot about it. He made it worse. He could have just stuck with the federal government is no longer involved in abortion issues. It's now at the state level. You have the ability now to voice your concerns at the state level. And you can just vote. We want these policies about abortion. Or we don't want abortion at all. Or we want abortion with exceptions. Or we want abortions with, you can't go beyond 20 weeks to abort, or 12 weeks, or whatever. People have that ability to come up with those propositions and vote on it. But now, Donald Trump just went, I don't know, he just kept talking a bunch of other stuff that just made it worse. It made no sense. And he just really put his foot in his mouth about abortion issues, and Kamala Harris just grilled them and just destroyed them on that topic.
Know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already. Just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term.
See, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire them.
This is someone who is open.
The withdrawal in Afghanistan was terrible. It really was for the Biden-Harris administration. It looked really bad. And I agree with Trump. There should have been people fired for incompetence. And yes, unfortunately, 13 people, Americans, got killed over it because it was so horribly handled. It was so bad. They left all great equipment out there, everything. They didn't, break down, demolish anything. They didn't take back a lot of the weapons, a lot of the vehicles or anything. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it when I witnessed it. So yeah, that whole withdrawal from Afghanistan and how terrible it was done, how poorly handled, that did leave a bitter taste in my mouth for sure.
Openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails.
I probably took a bullet.
So, I don't know how I feel about that. Donald Trump said this, he said that. How much of it is true? How much of it is taken out of context? It's just like, is this who he truly is? We may never know. Is some of it lies? Maybe. Is some of it true? Maybe. I don't know. And we probably will not get to the bottom of that. Let me go back a little bit.
It would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
Well, I think this is so rich coming.
Wow, he blamed Kamala and Biden for getting shot. I mean, he can say whatever he wants, but I mean, with the things that they said, Biden and Kamala Harris, did it lead up to the point where he got shot? Maybe, I don't know. But it's also, there's crazy people who are like so attached to politics to the point where they want to get violent, and that's not good. If you're so ambitious about your party, your tribe, Democrat or Republican, to the point where you want to get violent against the other side, you need to stop. Take a breather. Violence is not the answer.
From someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Look at what
I'm surprised when Trump is now considered a convicted felon that the Democratic Party did not say it over and over and over and over again. I expected them to, honestly. I figured she only said it once throughout the entire debate. I figured she would say it at least 10 times. This convicted felon. Just so it's drilled into people's heads like this is a bad guy. I am surprised in that fact that that did not happen.
November at his own criminal sentencing.
Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris.
The whole Trump admiring dictators, having an increased relationship with dictators like Putin, Kim Jong-un, stuff like that. I'm torn on that because the optics does look like he does admire that. He likes the respect of those dictators, their ruling. At the same time, he was willing to talk to them and negotiate peace. I'd rather prefer peace, honestly, overall, than to make fun of someone or criticize someone who is willing to talk to our enemies, who's willing to talk to negotiating peace with our enemies, our adversaries, instead of just continuing on with war and hating on all these other countries because we don't believe in what they do and they don't like us for whatever reason, and then we continue on with wars. And also with the whole situation with Israel and Ukraine, I find it hard for me to believe that Trump will get a deal done as president-elect, not even officially sworn into office again. I struggle with that. I mean, I'm willing to believe that he's willing to work hard to get those wars to stop. However, what does bother me is that the Biden and Harris administration let those wars break out. And since those wars have broken out, the United States and the taxpayers have been sending billions of dollars over there to those two wars, when those billions of dollars could be used here in the United States. But it's not. So when it comes to issues of like war, I do favor more on Trump's side, because I feel like there would be no more new wars and things would de-escalate. He was de-escalating with Afghanistan, apparently. I mean, I wish he would have withdrawn during his term, but it didn't happen. It was de-escalating. And then, of course, we all saw how Biden and Harris administration handled it.
Thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective.
I'm surprised they did not have the part about pets being eaten by immigrants. I think it was Haitian immigrants that I saw on Twitter, because I think that was the biggest foot in the mouth Trump did. That did not go in his favor. That made him look really bad. I wouldn't doubt if there was one of those illegal immigrants that maybe was eating dogs or cats, but that one immigrant doesn't represent all of the immigrants. And it's like this weird fear-mongering. Well, they both do fear-mongering, though, if you really think about it. But I think Trump's is more on immigrants and the illegal immigrants. But the problem with that is that, like, he's making it sound like we should be frustrated with all immigrants. But I know he said it a few times, he embraces legal immigrants, just not illegal. And he wants to make it like a faster process for legal immigrants to get to the U.S. But, I mean, he says that, but does he actually implement it? However, you have the Biden-Harris administration that's just like letting people come in waves. But, you know, we started noticing that there's more lockup at the border. Apparently, I'm not 100% sure that there's a less flow of illegals coming in, just because it's the election season, right? But anyway, that was my independent review. I'm an independent voter. I'm still not convinced of who I'm going to vote for. Like, it's my American right to vote, but I'm not thrilled about voting for a president. I feel like I'm stuck between a douchebag and a crap bag. You know, it's just like, these are my choices, really? These choices suck. They really do. I'm not excited about this election cycle. I don't care about any of these candidates. I really don't. There's a good chance I'm not gonna vote for a candidate, but it's like, it's also our right as Americans to vote for a candidate. So it's just like, damn it, dude. Like, this is my choices. I wish we had better choices. I wish we had a better system. The thing is, it's just, we have this weird system of like, who can pull the most money and return the favors before they get to the American people. I know both of these politicians are saying, oh, we're here for the people. But first, before they get to the people, they have to return favors. So, I mean, that's just my tangent about this whole election cycle. Either way, people are going to call me a conservative or liberal, whatever. It's the internet. Because you have to be all in on each side now, right? But either way, if you made it this far in the video, I believe I deserve a subscribe. Hit the like button. And until next time, comment below. I do read them too. And until next time.